Okay, so we are continuing with our expose of the devil in our food system.
Big Tobacco took the billions of profits they made from generations of addicted smokers and invested in something more family friendly. Something that could have a big effect on our future. Something that we consume every day. The food we eat. In 1985, tobacco giant R.J. Reynolds bought Nabisco Foods. Tobacco pioneer Philip Morris bought General Foods and 3 years later, Kraft Foods, making them the largest food producer in North America. And leaving the business of food in the capable hands of the same corporations who helped addict us to tobacco. Using the same tactics they used to promote tobacco, food companies set about peddling the entire planet a diet of processed goods, loaded with chemicals and additives, masquerading as food. This new machine operates with specific targets in mind, like addicting consumers, without them knowing it.
R.J. Reynolds. In 1963, I know that the movie said 1985, that's when they bought Nabisco. This actually started in 1963. So this was the first company that they bought out. Oh, I guess Hawaiian Punch used to be an alcoholic mixer for grown-ups. That's what it originated as. Wow. So their stocks started to tank. They needed to obviously keep money coming in. So they, like Morgan Freeman beautifully illustrated, went into the sugar industry. They bought out Hawaiian Punch, and they took they have a 5-step marketing model that is for addictions. It is a pre-written addiction model to create addictions in humans, and they applied it to Hawaiian Punch and targeted children. They used their surround marketing model then. Just like how if you think about like way back when we had Marlboro, you had the Marlboro man, you had Marlboro jackets, you had Marlboro posters, you guys got to save up your little Marlboro scanner things and send them in and you get all the Marlboro goods.
Marlboro luggage.
Marlboro luggage. It's called surround marketing. When you immerse somebody in the environment, it becomes all they know. And when you attach the 5-step addiction model to this, every single time you see a Marlboro logo, it tells your brain that's what you want. They understand the physiology of how brain chemistry works. They've known about it forever. And this is what they use to manipulate people. Right? The devil comes to us through our senses. This is physiologically what's happening and how that is able to be done within humans. It's science. So, the surround marketing is such a specifically dense way of marketing that it creates craving chemicals strong enough to control behavior just by submerging somebody in that environment. Here's the 5 steps to the addiction model. You have to have hidden addictive properties that are at such high levels that by the time the person realizes, oh, we might have a problem here, it doesn't matter. The brain chemistry and the neurotransmitters and the neural pathways are so heavily grooved that the person can't undo them by themselves without some serious intervention. It needs to be affordable. For example, cigarettes used to not be very affordable when there was a room full of people that were hand rolling them. They were pretty pricey. When they developed rolling machines, the price was able to come way down, then they could mass market them across everywhere, globally, right? Same thing happened with high fructose corn syrup. It was the sugar substitute that came in that was able to drop the price of processed foods very, 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 very quickly and made them dirt cheap. Affordability drove price down. Availability. Because the tobacco companies had very intimate relationships already with corner store markets and bodegas and everywhere that they sold cigarettes, they could easily use the same pathways to get all of their products then onto the shelves in all of these areas because it needs to be available to everybody. Everybody needs to have them, have access to them. Advertisement, we talked about the surround marketing already. That is a very crucial piece. Marketing everywhere. For example, your commercials. There's a slide later on that I'll actually talk about it later on then. When you can control human behavior, you can control a society. And obviously the age. The younger the age, this is in documentation. They actually had to hand over like 400,000 documents, one of these tobacco companies, to, I believe it was Harvard University, one of the big universities. They had to hand over all of their documents in some lawsuit, and there was a document that was found and pulled out of it that said, this was their marketing model, and the age factor is crucially important because the younger that you can develop these neural pathways, then you're basically guaranteeing that you have customers for life. And we'll talk about how in a second. So, everybody remember Punchy?
Yes.
This is what surround marketing looks like. So this was like the first go around at that, but that is exactly what Punchy did. So Punchy, you have all these toys. That's your touch and your sight, talking about how you get in through your senses. Joe Camel and the Marlboro Man, same thing.
He was handsome.
I believe you. I remember like this, there was like a horse involved.
Yes, he was
Okay.
very handsome.
Okay. Commercials, sight and sound. So Saturday morning cartoons was like the kids' time for TV, right? When it first started, they really only had about 150 commercials targeted towards children for all children's stuff. When this sugar industry started getting taken over by big tobacco, it went up to 550 commercials in 7 years, just targeting children, because if they can get the children hooked, then the children go into the grocery stores and they're like, but mommy, I want Fruit Loops because it says da-da-da-da-da, and they've got all the marketing and they've got the jingles. I mean, children walk around for the first 5 to 7 years in a theta brainwave, which is a hypnotic state. So what they are getting sticks in their subconscious mind forever to be stuck there unless they do some serious shadow work when they get older. Now, the really horrible part about all of this, in my opinion, is when you get down here to the colors and the sight and the touch. Cigarettes, boxes, and juice boxes are of the same size and shape for a specific reason, and that is because of multisensory learning. When you are sitting there sipping a juice box and you feel that in your hand, and then you have that sugar rush that instantly, it doesn't have to go to your gut. This bypasses your gut, goes straight to your brain. Your vagus nerve innervates your tongue, and it goes right up to your brain. You don't have to digest this. Sugar is much different in these concentrations. So within 2 seconds, you are getting a flood of dopamine into your brain that completely hits all of the receptors that heroin and cocaine do. Same ones. All right? So you're getting that experience while you're holding this juice box with all the beautiful colors on it. It's programming, because again, children are in a hypnotic theta state, so when you put something into a computer, when you're downloading it, it stays in the computer. Same thing. So they're getting that multi-sensory experience, multi-sensory through your senses, sight, touch, sound, taste, now this intense physical response that they're getting to the sugar that then hooks them on all of those levels. So, smells. Who has walked into Costco and smelled the bakery from the front door? They do that on purpose. It is pumped through the air ducts to get you to walk through the entire store to get to the back to the bakery so that you buy their goods, because they know that senses control your brain. And if they can control you then they can control your behavior, then they got you.
McDonald's realized the same thing with ventilation a long time ago.
Right. Costco was not the first one.
Dump it
Right.
out into the street.
Exactly. So they put all these additives in this stuff and they put all these chemicals in this stuff to enhance flavor and taste and smell. To do this. To manipulate your brain. Taste, like I said, it directly innervates with the brain. It's there in less than 2 seconds. Steal, kill, destroy. That's what Satan does here on earth. That's what this model of the food system supports. In 1985, R.J. Reynolds buys out Nabisco, like you heard him say. And in 1988, Philip Morris, this is the #1 tobacco company on earth, and R.J. Reynolds is the #2 tobacco company on earth. I believe there's 5 big ones. Now they all own all of the processed food industry as of date. To date, there's like 5 big companies that now own all of it. All of it. Kraft and General Mills they bought out. So your brain function. The addicted brain and the dopamine effect. When acting on cravings, which is what happens when you are watching a commercial and you're a child and you see Fruit Loops come on the screen, you're going to have a craving because your brain is like, oh, I know what that tastes like. So it triggers you to have a physical response. The brain gets a reward, a feeling of pleasure associated with the release of dopamine. You are now pleasure seeking. You're like, I gotta go have some, I gotta go have some, I gotta go have some, because you're having this signal go off in your brain, like, gimme, 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 you're gonna be happy. I want it, I want it, I want it. The reward is what cravings and food addictions are all about. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. I lied. Go back. Okay. The reward is what cravings and food addictions are all about. Just like a junkie, once they take their junk, they're like, oh, okay, I'm good. Until their brain trips up again and starts to have them send them into another physical craving, but it's the same loop. People with food addictions get their fix by eating a particular food until their brain has received all of the dopamine it was missing. What I left out here is that the, what's the word I'm looking for, Russo? The therapeutic level, but you need more and more and more and more. You build up a threshold. So you need more and more and more tolerance, thank you. Every single time you eat this stuff, you're not going to get the same dopamine release that you did the first time. Same thing with junkies, right? They need more and more and more. Same thing. So what's actually happening here is your frontal brain, the part when they say, no, you can't get a tattoo until you turn 25 because your brain is not fully developed yet. They're talking about your frontal brain. This is where logic and judgment and your braking system comes in. You need brakes to make good decisions, right? Like, wait a second, I gotta think that one through. This is your frontal lobe. The problem is that when you have a more primitive part of your brain, the pleasure center of your brain is more primitive, with these really strong neural pathways that have been developing over time and over time and over time, you are actually shunting blood, oxygen, from the frontal lobe, which is your braking system, to the more primitive part of your brain, your addiction center. So you can't physically make the right decisions when you're dealing with all of this stuff because you're not able to make a sound judgment because your brain is not being oxygenated in the proper areas that it needs to, which is crazy. It's like, I just said this to somebody this week, actually, when I was talking to her about a problem that she was going through. It's like when you try and make a really good, so you have all these habits that you developed throughout your lifetime, right? And it's gotten you into this mess physically, chronic diseases, whatever the problem is, right? And now you're trying to make amends. It's like these neural pathways, since you've been doing them your entire life, these behaviors have entrenched such strong highways into your brain. We talked about it last year with Pastor Frank's sermon on, I don't remember what it was called, but he did such a beautiful job of illustrating how your brain is really where the work needs to be done. Because you have these highways that get developed over so many years of doing the same thing over and over, and then the outside world reinforcing that behavior. When you walk into a grocery store and you smell those smells and you see that Coke, or you have to walk through the bakery, those things are being reinforced in your brain whether you want them to or not. It is an unconscious, you don't walk into the grocery store like this. God bless you if you do. I will go shopping with you because I like to be those people. Like, we run through the bad parts. Like, I say we, me, myself, my soul, and my son. So, versus off-roading is like when you try and make a healthy choice, all of a sudden you're like, pull the car off the freeway, and you get out, and then you get into an ATV, and you've never ridden one before, and you are now trying to go through the woods by yourself on no path. Every single thing in your body is like, turn around and get back on the highway. You're nuts. Like, this is not survivable. Turn around, turn around, turn around. And you know, and this is why willpower is not enough to change behavior, because it's not. Like, it's just not. You need the well, we'll get to what you need. We'll get to what you need. But that's what I mean by highway versus off-road. Repeat exposure to sensory stimulating messaging creates deeper addictions. It just runs those highways, those neural pathways in your brain, deeper and deeper and deeper. Howard Moskowitz, brilliant guy, PhD from Harvard. Check out what he's got. A degree in experimental psychology of marketing. I was like, wow, that's a thing? That's a really dangerous position. Who would come up with something? Apparently Harvard. And he worked out really well because one of the tobacco companies hired him to magically come up with a potion that was the perfect ratio of salt, fat, and sugar. Yep, sugar, salt, fat. He came up with the magic ratios to maximize neurotransmitter releases in your brain. So the one tobacco company put it in all of their stuff, then everybody had to hire him because now that company's products are way more addictive than everybody else's. So now they all got to hire him. So he really got around. He really got around. He's the reason why your tomato sauce, your ketchup, your prepared sauces, your salad dressings, why everything has sugar in it. You can thank him. He was hired by the tobacco and food companies to develop the magic formula. Oh yeah, ketchup, salad dressing, breads, your breads, unless you're buying Ezekiel, which has scripture on the side. I would advise everybody do that. Do that one. Prepared sauces. He was brilliant. Brilliant. So, obviously, you have a food additive that gets added to your food. It triggers your brain. It creates a food addiction pretty much almost immediately because your brain is like, wow, I've never had this much dopamine before in my life. That was amazing. Do that again. You are, by nature, designed from the time that you are breastfed to have dopamine responses to things that are beneficial for you. Human breast milk has casein in it. It has like a minuscule amount. This is the protein that when you drink your mother's breast milk, your brain really gets triggered by this casein molecule, and you're like, oh, that's so great. That's why mothers and babies, when they're breastfeeding, have such an intimate, like, beautiful thing happening. It's because of the lovely dopamine, and it's beautiful.
It's like 2 grams per ounce as opposed to 26 grams per ounce in cow's milk.
And this is another reason why dairy is so addictive.
And casein,
because
it has casomorphines in it, which is
Right.
the actual drug that addicts you to
right,
the...
right.
It's actually called casomorphine.
Right, because it triggers the same morphine receptors in your brain. This is why we're designed to drink human breast milk and not cow breast milk, because I wouldn't want to walk up to a cow and drink its breast milk. But, you know, people think that that's normal. Okay, so recognize your drugs in the food. Okay, so these are all the drugs that are in your food that they use in horrible proportions to get you to continue to eat them. corn, wheat, dairy. We just talked about the morphine molecule in dairy. That means your ice cream and your milkshakes and all of dairy. Wheat is part of the gluten molecule. There's two parts to the gluten molecule. It's gliadin and glutenin, and it's the gliadin protein. If you go way back to our wheat lecture, like a half a year ago, come on, brain. They used psychiatric facilities for this really good experiment that NIH put out. I believe it was the NIH. And they took wheat out of the schizophrenic patients' diets. Now, this was back when they had like big open wards, so it was very easily controlled. Everybody had the same meds, everybody had the same food, everybody had the same life, everybody lived in the same room. So it was very easy to maintain an experiment type of situation, simulation in there. So they take the wheat out for 6 weeks, and guess what happened? Their hallucinations went away, their paranoia went away, their schizophrenia didn't go away, but their symptoms became way more manageable. Then they put the wheat back in, and all of it came back. They replicated this in many different psychiatric facilities all over the place, and then the NIH was like, what the heck is this? What's in there that is doing this? And they did some research, and they found that it was the gliadin protein in wheat, in gluten, that was doing this. Now, gluten does way bad other things to your digestive tract, which we'll have to circle back around to leaky gut at some point in the future. But, okay, sugar, we've talked about that to know, and plus it's a genetically modified food too, so you don't really want to mess with that. So, fat, trans fats, the fake stuff, very, very, very highly addictive. Your tongue is like, oh, this is so good. And again, your tongue has got direct innervation with your brain. So if you're talking about addictive substances, it's there in no time flat. You're having those really intense dopamine releases that are not natural. They're not natural. So if the devil's going to get you, he's going to get you that way. Not natural stuff. God didn't want it to be like this. Caffeine is addictive. See how I skirted around that one? And additives, they are designed to get you. They're designed to make food taste way better. They are designed to hook you. They are chemicals. God only knows what they are. They're not good. They're not good.
MSG.
What?
MSG.
Oh, MSG, monosodium glutamate. It's a neurotoxin. These all create neurotransmitter releases that go boo, and then your brain is singing. So, when these industries started to grow, they needed more resources. They started monopolizing our agriculture system. They don't want small family farms. They want you to mow down everything and plant one crop so that your farms can feed big industry, which big industry is processed foods. So they want corn for miles and miles. They want wheat for miles and miles. You still see this today. This is an ongoing practice. It's horrible. They demolished the small family farm that actually fed people food. These big farms don't feed people food. They feed a silo that feeds animals, or that goes to a packaging facility that makes crap. That's what they do. They don't feed people. Processed food for industry, not to eat. Agribusiness equals processed food. Small family farms equals farmers markets, nice pie, good stuff.
When we walk through the supermarket, we're bombarded with choices. Fresh or frozen. Low fat or lots of fat. Cool Ranch or nacho cheese. With so much variety, we assume that some of it's healthy, some of it's junk, and at least we have a choice. But do we? Is picking the best from a pile of flavorless tomatoes really a choice? Or were key choices about what we eat made for us long before we walked into the store? The industrial food system is not doing what a food system needs to do, which is not just produce lots of food, but to keep a population healthy. Industrial food system is making us very sick in many, many different ways. There is the obesity epidemic. There is diabetes. 4 out of 10 leading killers in this country are food-related chronic diseases.
I'm really worried about what's going to happen in this country if we don't sort of wake up and understand the consequences of every decision that we make about everything that we eat every day.
There's a big problem with food in our country today. Large commodity producers and large agribusinesses have hijacked and taken over the farm subsidy programs, and it's resulting in the production of food types that aren't healthy for us Americans.
Our government food policy promotes eating junk food. It really does. The rewards go to the people who make junk foods. So in a sense, our current food system promotes obesity.
One of the most remarkable things, I think, about this rise of industrial food in the second half of the 20th century is that it's been underwritten by taxpayer dollars.
If you listen to debates, there's never anything about the food system. It takes people like us, the sustainable food people, to bring up that stuff. And when we go and we get involved in the policy piece of the Farm Bill, it's like we're going up against Goliath. And we really lose almost every time.
When tobacco stock prices started to go down, the tobacco company went to the State Department and said, help, we're drowning, get us in international waters. So that's when they started expanding to third world countries and started bringing over their processed food over there. And now it's obviously, all of these chronic disease epidemics are very well known to be a problem in the United States. That is not a secret, but it is rapidly growing in third world countries now as a massive, massive, massive issue, which, it's just not a sustainable model. It's not, because you can't, it's just disgusting. It's not a sustainable model. But the problem is now you have all of these marketing strategies in play, and really the industry is buyer beware. That is what it is. The government is not there for our protection. It is there to protect market shares and to protect big industries, because that is who pays into their pockets, regardless of what happens.
There's actually, I was going to put in a clip about, I left it out though, there's actually laws that were passed, they're called cheeseburger laws, and it basically protects all these companies from being sued by consumers if you get sick or, overweight or die from a disease. You can't sue them, and the basis of it was that you should have known better. You should have known that these foods were not healthy, and it's your own fault for eating them.
However,
but yet they promote them as being healthy.
When they promote them, they put vending machines into children's schools. So again, you know what you're not supposed to eat, but when I send my child to school and there's a vending machine there that's full of garbage, it is telling my child that is walking around in a hypnotic state that this is okay, this is allowable, that this is normal, that this is what humans eat. So, buyer beware it's just not a fair statement, because people are so unaware. This is why, I wanted to start this class, and it was partly because of Pastor Frank one day when he was talking in his sermon. He said, he made a comment like that, people know what they should be eating, but that's their choice, basically, and that they just don't. Well, no, I beg to differ. No, people do not know what they should be eating, because the signaling and the sensory input is so overwhelming, and it's confusing on purpose. And if a proper nutritional study comes out, big industries pay billions of dollars to scientists to put out chaos.
Yes.
Thank you to Satan. But that is that's it. It's very hard to stand on a platform when you are surrounded by chaos and just confusion everywhere. Your brain, your frontal lobe shuts down, and you go into your subconscious pre-programmed way of living, which is The same way that you drive a car and you don't think about driving the car, it's just, you just know what to do. So that's what happens. Chaos shuts down your frontal lobe thinking and you just go into programming, and that's how you survive. So it's very easy to live from that place when you're surrounded by chaos. That was my whole point. Earth's #1 killer. Chronic disease related to lifestyle choices. Alzheimer's, diabetes, heart disease, these are all lifestyle choices. Diet-related disease overtook smoking-related disease, which used to be the #1 killer, in under 20 years. Done. Vending machines replaced cigarette machines. That was what happened.
I just read a statistic. It said 70% of deaths now are diet-related diseases. Cardiovascular disease, cancer being the top 2.
And I say it's a lifestyle disease, but we're talking about how entrenched these neural pathways are. These are not easy things to come out of, and that is why I thoroughly enjoy standing up here sharing this information with you, because if I keep repeating the same thing over and over and over again, my goal is that I am going to start competing on some level in your brain. You will start to hear me. Mice addicted to opioids, heroin, cocaine, actively addicted. If they are given the choice, here's heroin and cocaine addicted mice, and here's sugar, they will choose sugar 100% of the time.
More addictive than cocaine, more addictive than heroin.
It is not a joke. This man is the director of the Hippocrates Health Institute. There are only a few men that I love more than him. Dad, he reminds me oh so much of you. It's not even funny. He is very in your face. He is very to the point. I don't think he's very blunt or rude in this one.
No.
How about getting to the point where you're woman and man enough to say no to total insanity? And we're going to give you the biggest food problems. #1 is sugar. By the way, we're going to give you for free my sugar book. One of the most important books I wrote, and certainly if somebody said, what's the #1 thing people should give up that's bad? It's sugar. We've done work on that. Now finally the consensus with the legitimate scientific community, there's not too many of them, but legitimate. You're going to hear a lot of people tell you how great fruit is on this stage, etc. That's all now passé stuff. Passé. But sugar is male hormone's best friends because it gets rid of it. Makes you estrogenic. And women it makes what? Masculine. And what doesn't have sugar in it? I'll bring you to the best health store here locally and show you that most of the products have sugar in it, where they break into sugar. You may say, I don't eat any sugar, I don't eat any of those products. You eat potatoes, you eat bread, you eat pasta. 20, 30 minutes you have sugar in it. That's just people who are trying to hide they have a sugar problem. You follow? And the #1 addiction in the world is sugar. Not heroin, not alcohol, not cocaine, sugar. You say, oh, Brian, you're extreme. You're extreme if you don't know that. Cocaine and heroin are far less addictive than sugar. And how many of you have ever tried to give up all sugars here? The hardest thing I ever did. Gave up meat, boom. Loved meat, gave it up. Gave up dairy, boom. Sugar, 35 years. Just rename my sugar. This isn't sugar, this is a ½ pound of honey. You rawies, oh, it's agaves here. That's worse. Worse. The hardest thing in the world. 30 times more addictive than cocaine. I never took cocaine. Thank God I didn't, because I would have gotten fat with that too, I'm sure. But the reality, quite simple, is that's pretty bad. People who took cocaine said to me, look at, one time we wanted to constantly take it. It made us heroic, made us feel like we were super people. What do you think sugar does? One of the most interesting articles I ever read in the New York Sunday magazine section was exposing the sugar cartel. Read it. Pull it up. Must be online. These people kill. How many of you know, how many of you black people even know, that slavery came from the sugar industry? Half the black friends of mine, they didn't know that. When a handful of arrogant white aristocracy in Europe wanted the substance called sugar, which was hardly eaten, by the way. It was so revered and so expensive, it was exclusive, that they'd eat a kilo a year. 2.5 pounds a year. 2.2 pounds a year. They said, well, Europeans can't do this. It's too hard to work. Who are the people that can do it? So they went over and took these innocent Africans. Innocent people. They were so beautiful. Have you ever been to Africa? Most genuinely human people I've ever met. They talk like this, hello. And they mean it. They embrace hello. So the most beautiful, that's your ancestors. And they said, oh, just get in our boats here. Oh, wow, we're going to take a boat ride. And they brought them through the Caribbean, they brought them to North Carolina, South Carolina, and they enslaved them so that a handful of white folks could take a kilo of sugar a year. Now, one of the things that governments have known ever since the beginning of organized society, which is the beginning of the end of society, the end of culture, is that you divide and you conquer. And why they pour into certain communities cocaine and heroin is divide and conquer. And they got all of us to take the substance now, called sugar. You are a slave to sugar. So your governments intentionally started to subsidize the sugar industry, and by the way, the average person consumes 120 to 160 pounds of sugar a year. The slave industry came out of it. You're now enslaved. It's karmic, I'm going to tell you right now. And I'm not going to ask you, but you know you have a problem with sugar. If you're just renaming your sugar, you have a bigger problem. That's like an alcoholic says, I only drink 1 cup of wine a day, but try to take it away from me.
Okay, so Frankenfoods and your poor starving cells. Processed foods are not real foods. They are Frankenfoods. They are food-like substances. They are made to appear like they are supposed to be food. I remember this SpongeBob SquarePants episode from, I don't know, Lucy's Error.
I know it.
Oh yeah, were you an addict of that too? Because we were. We had like a whole season. So Mr. Krabs sold his Krabby Shack, Patty Shack, to a big corporation, and they came in and they put conveyor belts everywhere, and they had, you know, the cooking was in the back, and like everybody was just sitting there like this, and like SpongeBob came back and was like appalled because the Krabby Patties were not magical anymore. They were painted gray blobs of crud, like that's what they were. But everybody thought because the place looked beautiful and it was all light and shiny that it was going to be this really wonderful experience, as opposed to Mr. Krabs Shack that was like just, you know, there was a boat in the floor and a register and a crabby octopus and really minimal decor. So that's what this reminds me of. Like, this is what this food is. It's like painted and smelled on and you know, made to look like it's something that it is very much not. And again, the whole point of eating is to feed your cells so that you can continue to live another day on beautiful planet Earth, experiencing God in every beautiful soul that you see, connecting to one another, connecting to nature, just experiencing it all. And if you are not doing that, then you are not living. And if you are feeding yourself stuff that doesn't actually feed your cells, then like, what's the point? I don't know. You're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. So your body's not going to support you in a thriving way. You're going to end up with sickness and disease and really kind of go a different way. And separate from the whole reason why you came down here. Your body does not read these things as food. So it does not trip the right hormones in your brain to tell you to stop eating. It skips over the food center. It skips over the eating center. So when you get full, or when you eat enough, your stomach sends messengers to your brain. Your brain's like, okay, I'm good. And it takes, you know, maybe 15 minutes and you're like, you stop eating because you feel satiated when you are eating the right food. When you are not eating the right food, that doesn't happen. So you just keep eating. And then the dopamine gets higher and higher and higher, and you just keep eating. So you're actually way overfed and way malnourished. That is what you see when you see every overweight child walking around right now. They are overfed and malnourished. They are not eating the way that they're designed by God to eat. So I had to talk about the microbiota and the gut-brain axis for 5 seconds because this is like the love of my life. This is the foundation of all health, and bring it into the addiction model a little bit because, as I said, all of those drugs that you get fed in your food completely messes with your microbiota. It feeds the bad bugs. Bad bugs don't eat fiber. They don't eat greens. Only good bugs eat greens. So if you're feeding yourselves potato chips and Jell-O and all of the things, your bad bugs are going to way overpopulate your good bugs. And not only do they way overpopulate, but they actually make this thing called a biofilm. It's like a fortress inside your gut. So they like kick out all the good bugs and they like secrete these chemicals that actually fortifies their layer on top of your gut lining, so like they stay in place. And the only way that you're going to dispel them is if you take some pretty potent herbs that like bust holes in them, and then you can kind of nuke them out. But still, they're sophisticated. This is sophisticated. We are the most sophisticated thing on earth. Like what our eyes are capable of doing, just like human development in general is just so mind-blowing on a cellular level. And these guys control every bit of it. They control every bit of it. So if you are feeding them the wrong food, then they are sending direct messages to your brain. This is where your serotonin and your dopamine actually gets made. 95% of it gets made in your gut. And then it goes up to your brain. It doesn't get made in your brain. So now you have this out-of-balanced microbiota, which is sending messages up to your brain, and now you have this loop. And now it is a physiological condition. Now not only are you getting the sensory stimulation, but now you are getting the gut that's driving addictions and physical responses and emotional responses to food. And like, oh, I want that. And ooh, you get tingles in your belly when you see a Hershey bar on the side because you're like, oh, yay. And now your gut bugs are happy. Like that's actually what's happening. It's mind-blowing. Like it's just crazy. It's so crazy.
The microbiome is all of the microorganisms that live on and within our bodies. And so there's about 10 times as many microorganisms that live in our bodies as there are cells of our own bodies. And one of the things that we understand is that we have this symbiotic relationship with them. We provide a lovely home for all these microorganisms, and then they directly influence our health. One of the things that is the most important property of a healthy gut microbiome is diversity. So we want something like 500 to 1,000 different species of microorganisms growing in there in healthy relative quantities. There's certain things that can actually make the wrong types of bacteria grow. Then you have a system that's out of balance. Then you have the lack of variety that is one of the biggest risks for chronic illness. So we need to feed them vegetables and fruit and nuts and seeds and these great sources of nutrient-dense fiber, lots of plant phytochemicals. And then we can have this healthy, robust variety of microorganisms living within our digestive tracts, living within our bodies, that are then providing us with all of these great benefits like regulating the immune system. So the gut microbiome, beyond influencing the immune system, influences things like brain health, influences how our neurotransmitters are regulating themselves. They can change our hormones and influence our hormones. And we understand just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the gut microbiome. We are starting to understand how profound and far-reaching their effects are.
But this, to me, completely describes the experience when you walk into a grocery store. Completely describes the experience. I am the only person in the grocery store when I am there. Maybe not the only one, but the only one in my lane that's got the stuff in my cart that I have in my cart, looking at everybody else with the But why do people need to buy so many boxes of Coca-Cola at once? I don't
Because
understand.
it's like four for,
they're-
you know,
four for
$10.
$12
But you
or
still
something
get,
ridiculous.
they're still $2.50 each, even if you buy two. You don't have to buy four.
But if
I
you
mean,
got
do
more,
people-
you'll drink more.
I know, but
That's the whole point.
Yeah.
So this very much illustrates to me the shift that I want everybody to start taking, because it is not the easy road. It is not the easy road. And if I have not illustrated to you by now that the alternative road leads to nothing but death and destruction, and it does not lead to life and connection and being human the way that we were designed to be human. Like, we have that ability on earth, but you have to make the right choices along the way. That is where your free will comes into play. If you are not exercising your free will in every single choice that you make and putting stuff into this amazingly created divine body that you get to inhabit while you're down here, then you're going to end up going towards death and destruction and pain and, you know, like, it's just horrible. I watched my mother-in-law. Okay, I had to let the crying go away. I watched my mother-in-law suffer a horrible death. And the love I had for that woman. And that's not fair. And that's not fair. People don't deserve to die in their last years on earth in that way. ICU, she was septic. Our decisions were either call in hospice or send her to the OR, where she would come out probably never able to talk again with a colostomy bag. And like, this woman liked her shiny stuff, so like a colostomy bag on Judy was not gonna work. And that was such a hard decision. And we made the right one, but like, having to sit through that experience was not fair. And I remember when we were starting to wake up to all of this, we tried to bring her along, and like, we got her a juice, or, you know, a really good blender, and like, you know, started doing all of this stuff, and it was too late for her by far. She was in her 70s, she had very advanced COPD, like, there were so many things wrong. And when you start to displace toxins in your cells that have been there for so long, they don't really have any place to go, because it's not like she was an active woman where she could, you know, just jump on a treadmill and run it out. Like, she needed to start the process 15 years beforehand for it to really have made a difference. But that's not fair. It's not fair. She was a beautiful soul, and I want to see people dying of natural age, of natural causes, of just they go to sleep and they just die peacefully. They don't have to be in a hospital bed hooked up to IVs and getting high-dose morphine to keep the pain away. Like, that's just not how it was designed. It's biblical. It's not how it was designed.
I'm sure we all have many stories like that.
Right, exactly, exactly. So, how do we break this cycle? You need to take the old couch out before you bring the new couch in, was a really big takeaway that I loved the illustration, the mental illustration that Pastor Frank gave us last year when we were talking about all of this. And it's really true. So that is what I am standing up here trying to do, is give you information so you can rip the couch out and throw it outside and burn it. And then your job is immersion therapy. Food addiction. Food is something that we have to do multiple times a day. So this is a very difficult decision to make, and stay conscious about it. And it doesn't work all the time. Sometimes we do have to have a fast thing. So I mean, like, that's it. We live in such a fast-paced world. You have to allow for grace to be like, okay, it's fine, not a big deal. But that's why there's like a really good 80-20 rule. Like if you're able to control what you got going on about 80% of the time, your microbiota is going to be strong enough to be able to handle something that you need to do on the fly, or when you go to a birthday party, or when you go to Christmas, or when you do all of the life things that use food as a celebration, because that's a real thing. We need to eat to nourish ourselves, but we eat for celebrations. We give 1-year-olds massive sugar rushes on their first birthday, playing and frosting. I mean, it's like weird what we do, and it's mildly child abuse if you think about it on a cellular level. Like Halloween, literally, I have such a problem with. We won't go there. So, how do we break the cycle? Admit you are not in control. You have no control over what society has done to your brain from a very young age. You had no control. And neural pathways are not something that you can muscle your way through. It is a physiological, I mean, there are actually neuron bundles, and the more you do it, the more they get covered in a protective coating. Like, it is a real physiological structure in your anatomy. I actually got these off of like a 12-step food thing.
You need 6 months.
I think I have some on the next slide. But all right, so admit you're not in control. Higher power comes from God. If you are struggling in the moment, this is when you throw your hook, okay, hold me through this one, and really connect to the higher power that lives inside of you that comes from God. Examining past mistakes. And I don't mean this in like a guilt-ridden way. I mean this as in you are brought through situations and to situations, and you have experiences that may negatively impact you in your life, but the only reason why we have those is to learn from them. This is how evolution has come so far with human consciousness, is because we have been able to learn from our mistakes on an individual level. So you have mistakes that you've made in the past. No, I wish I didn't do that, or I wish I didn't do that. Okay, well, what can I learn from that? Okay, I know that if I want to eat this way, I need to set up my entire household to support this. If you saw my kitchen 10 years ago and my kitchen today, I have now understood the fact that ADHD brains, you shut cabinets and you don't know what's in there. So I don't have cabinets. I have cabinets for my plates and for my cups and for all that stuff, but I don't have cabinets for everything else. I have open shelving, and all of my food is in jars on the shelf. It looks like a full-blown apothecary when you go into my kitchen. I have all my fruits and vegetables in a see-through refrigerator and all over my countertop. That is what my kitchen looks like. So when you walk into my kitchen, you are in the experience. It took me a while, but it was something that I gave over to God and said, this is how I know you want me to eat and how I know you want me to raise my family. Help me get there. And this is where we've come to date. That is what my kitchen looks like, and I could not be any happier with it. It's beautiful to me. It's beautiful. But it took a while. Apply grace and make amends. So, I really didn't want to eat all of those cookies. But okay, Ashley tells me that there are neurochemicals that are going on in my brain, and I haven't been able to get them out yet or balance them out yet. So I'm going to forgive myself and move past this, and tomorrow's another day. Live a new way of life, like I just illustrated with my kitchen. It took a really long time because you can't plant a seed and expect a tree the next day. You have to allow for the process to go through what it needs to go through in order to get there. But when you commit and you make that heartfelt promise to God and you continually make the next right step in front of you, then your life does change and your trajectory does change. That is the divine design of Earth. Surround and immerse yourself in a new lifestyle, like I did with my kitchen. New friends, all of it. Avoid stimulating activities or places. Use Whole Foods like delivery service. Like, not going to the grocery store saves me so much money on my grocery bill because I'm not triggered to buy something that I don't need, that's not on my thing, but I needed it when I'm in the store, and then I get home and I'm like, why did I buy that? Like, I'm not gonna make that. But like, I was convincing myself in the grocery store I was gonna make it. But like, really? So that's a really great tool that we now have as humans, is to be able to order that stuff online and not have to go and submerge yourself in that very triggering environment. It's designed to do that, to get you to spend your money on stuff you don't need. Using your mirror neurons, there are neurons in your brain that when you look at somebody and you're like, ooh, I really like that, I want that. Your brain is actually using its mirror neurons and picking up traits of somebody else and integrating that into your brain. These are real mirror neurons, that's what they are called. So utilize that. When you have on TV these really amazing, life-changing documentaries, and you are surrounding yourself with that, you're going to feel it in your soul. It's going to start integrating on a deep level if you are constantly reaching for that and immersing yourself in that. So if you are having a hard time with these things, start there. Just start flooding yourself and your surroundings with this information, because you will naturally then make the next right step. If you go home and you continually are watching the same news at home, that's not going to help your situation. Number one, it's going to stress you out, which is going to make you want to eat. And two, you're not actually growing and learning from that. It's not doing anything to you except actually keep you in a stress response, which is a whole nother conversation. But, so use these to your advantage. Like, these are God-given. This is a way to combat what is going on, is to watch it, see it, learn it, love it, and then it like, you just get it. And it takes a little while, but like, you gotta start somewhere. That's a very easy thing to do. Keep food media out of your house. We watch Netflix, and, we don't have cable in our house anymore, so it's a little bit easier for us. Decreased sleep increases your food cravings. Every single thing in your body runs on a circadian rhythm, not just your eyelids, everything. Your body needs proper sleep in order to heal your gut lining, in order to heal everything, but specifically your gut lining, which we know is the foundation for all health. So, and not only that, but it regulates your emotions and your hormones as well. So if you're not sleeping well, then you're going to be crabby, and you're going to be moody, and your blood sugar isn't going to be balanced, which, again, all triggers cravings. Come smart activities. Smart activities. Start using your frontal lobe. Puzzles, coloring book. Smart things that you can do with your time rather than sitting down and just watching the news. That's not going to give you anything. It's just going to take from you. I promise. Your ancient brain is your primitive brain. If there's food, eat it. Because we don't have it, so eat it. So if you have food in your pantry that you're not supposed to be eating, that's what you're going to go to, and that's what you're going to, if it's not available, then you won't be craving it. If it's not in your house, and your house is full of celery sticks and carrots and fruit and apples and cherries and berries and frozen stuff you can make ice cream out of and all of that stuff and avocado pudding, and I can give you all these recipes, then that's what you're going to go for, because that's what's going to be available to you. If you are buying it and making it available to you, then you're tempting yourself. This was my experience. From the bitterness of disease, man learns the sweetness of health. I walked through drugs, I walked through alcohol, I walked through many a lost friendship, I used to walk through all these with 2 shopping carts full of absolute junk, because my parents never had junk in the house because they didn't have time to grocery shop. I don't know what it was. And I was like, I am going to have the cool house with all of the food. And then came Aldi's. And I was like, I could buy potato chips for $1.69. And then I'd be like, this is amazing. So I was sick. I was addicted to everything. I can't even tell you how many boxes of wine I would go through a week. I had a whole commercial for Franzia. Had they only just seeked me out. Could have really done them good. Like, the boxed wine, like the cheap stuff, like that's what I was addicted to. And I was really sick. So I know what it feels like to be completely out of control and completely, I mean, sick, Lyme's disease, Bell's palsy, like not good. Having to use and then abuse Adderall because I had no energy because I was not feeding any part of my body the way that I was supposed to be. So I now know what it feels like to feel that disconnected from your body. I literally was not even in my body, if that makes sense. I was just like a nothing head. And like now I really understand what it feels like to be a human that has healed and has so much more to go. But it is a very different experience standing in a human body, having come from so far, but just being able to feel the difference in that. And it is so powerful, and like hell, I will ever do that again. Because that was hell. It was hell. And the thing is that you don't even know that you're in it, but you're in it. Like hell exists here on earth, as does heaven. And that's what that reality feels like, and I've been there. That's it. End of story.
Bring down giants.